We have had technical problems. The first half of this meeting has been minuted. From now, the meeting will be recorded but not live streamed. This recording should be available tomorrow on the council website. Now go to item 10.1. With the recommendation is that council accepts the Q3 year-to-date March 2022 financial report. Moved by Councillor Croucher, seconded by Councillor Price. Councillor Croucher.
Yes, well, the bottom line of this report is that at the end of the March, the financial position is still favourable to the forecast figure, and that expectation forecast will be in line at the end of the year. And very, very pleased to make that recommendation. Councillor Price.
I just make the comment that recently the Finance Department has asked for feedback in regards to what the service that they provide to council, to community, and how we saw that. And we all spoke favourably about the explanations that are provided in all the reports. And I hope that that's noted by the community, and any feedback about that we've received well.
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Shepherd.
Yes, I'd just like to ask a question. I see we have a favourable variance of $69,000 for the sale of recyclables income, and being very aware of how the community is paying attention to how much we make on waste and how much we charge. I was just wondering if you could tell us what we would be doing with that $69,000 extra that is a variance.
You're right. Liking? No, I'm not. I'm just answering. Look, I think the variance, if we just look at the revenue side, it does look to be a favourable variance, but sometimes it's purely in the transaction. We might have had a load disposed of that we weren't otherwise looking at. So I don't think across the waste budget as a whole, we're looking at that being an end of year result to the same extent. So there will be some offsetting costs.
Yep. So we'll keep an eye on that for the end of the year. Yeah. Yep. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Do you wish to sum up, Councillor Croucher? Is anybody against the motion? Carried. Item 10.2, the recommendation is the council refuses planning permit application 21253 on the grounds that insufficient information has been submitted with the application to enable an assessment to be undertaken against clause 37.07 farm zone, 44.06 bushfire management overlay, and 42.03 significant landscape overlay.
I just have a question.
Councillor Goldsworthy.
Yeah, I was just curious in relation to the 60 days that we have to decide a matter once it's lodged with us, that the clock stops, so to speak, when it goes to a referral authority. Has it been returned to the applicant for further information, and does the clock stop then, or does it keep running? And have we run out of time?
I don't know that off the top of my head. I'd have to take that one on notice. I know that it hasn't gone to referral or advertising at this stage because we're still waiting on some information, but whether it stops during the RFI process, I need to confirm that.
In light of that, I'll move that we defer this matter until the next council meeting, so that we can be sure that the applicant has had sufficient time to get all the required information to council.
Would somebody like to second that deferment? Seconded by Councillor Shepherd. There'll be no further discussion. Is anybody against the motion? Carried. Item 11.1, the recommendation is that council adopts the Indigo Shire Council Reconciliation Action Plan. Somebody like to move that recommendation? Moved by Councillor Goldsworthy, seconded by Councillor Shepherd. Councillor Goldsworthy.
It's a significant step forward for us in the process. Whilst some may say it's the beginning of the process, it's been a while in coming. it is important that we recognise our relationship with our Indigenous population and we support them as much as possible. This action plan has been out for consultation. It's certainly done the rounds amongst many of those stakeholder groups. And it's a beginning where we can start looking at our internal processes and how we can continue the process.
Councillor Shepherd.
Yes, I'd just like to quote a piece out of the report. Committing to a reflect wrap process allows officers and councillors to spend time scoping and developing relationships with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander stakeholders, refining a shared vision for reconciliation and exploring council's sphere of influence. I think that quite nicely sums up what this plan will do. So it's really the beginning of a relationship that we're going to be having with our local Indigenous communities. So yeah, it's exciting that we're doing this, and I'm glad that it's well, if it passes tonight, it's the beginning.
Would anybody else like to speak to Councillor Croucher?
I'd just like to ask a question here. It says on page 29 at the October 2021 council meeting, Councillor Jenny O'Connor, Councillor Diane Shepherd were nominated to participate on the Indigo and Shire Council RAP working group. Is there a need to update that, or is that working group now finished, or will it continue? If so, do we need to change that councillor on that position? Is that a set position or not?
What ended up happening? Did we nominate another person?
I don't think for this one, I don't think we did.
I just suggest we come back to that
Okay,
at the next meeting if we need to nominate somebody else.
thank you very much.
Come back to that.
Okay, fine.
Good question, though.
Oh, thank you.
Very good. Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Goldsworthy, anybody against the motion? Carried. As has been said, it's just a start. Item 12.1, the recommendation is the council notes the March Capital Works report and year-to-date progress in the delivery of the Capital Works program. Somebody like to move that recommendation? Moved by Councillor Croucher. Seconder, Councillor Price. Councillor Croucher.
Well, look, despite COVID and subsequent economic problems, including delays on materials and increase on contract prices, the Capital Works delivery continues to progress very well, and I'd like to congratulate them on that.
Councillor Price.
I'd just say that it's an enormous task at the moment. It's enormous program that we've got, but as is alluded to in the report, there are all sorts of pressures that we just encapsulate by calling them COVID, and that can mean supply chain issues, it can mean staffing issues, it can mean trying to attract project managers. It really does mean a lot of different things. So we'll be doing very well to continue to get this work done.
Anybody? Councillor Shepherd.
I just had a question. I've been hearing that people have been asking about the Chiltern Community Hub. So I was just wondering if now, well, you know, we've got the floor, whether you could just tell us how that's going, where we're up to.
Yeah, sure. So the community hub, the first, I suppose, component of that was to find a new home for the SES. So we've just completed that. SES have taken up possession or residency, I was going to say, in the new premises in Anderson Street. So I understand the builder was starting on site today. So we must have a planning permit, building permit ready to go. So we're really just at the, I suppose, the very first point now of commencing on site in Crawford Street. So yeah, really exciting milestone to get to.
Great, thank you. That is exciting. Yeah.
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Wish to sum up, Councillor Croucher?
No, I can't find it.
Is anybody against the motion? Carried. Item 13.1, the recommendation is the council adopt Indigo Shire Council Social Media Policy 2022. So we'd like to move that recommendation. Moved by Councillor Price, seconder. Councillor Shepherd. Councillor Price.
I think as with any sphere such as social media, it's really important that we have a policy that clearly defines where we engage, how we engage, and what sort of information that we put out onto our channels, making sure that that doesn't cross over with other organisations and the such. This has been out for comment, and I think none received.
No,
Right?
so
And so, as the conclusion says, it's an updated policy to reflect council's maturity in managing social media and ensuring there's sound governance and controls in place to minimise any negative impacts to the reputation from social media comments. So, congratulations to the staff that worked on this. Thank you.
Councillor Shepherd? No.
Can I just ask a
Councillor
question?
Croucher?
Yeah, I'm just very interested in social media because it's changing every year, year in and year out. And I just noticed that we changed from 2018 to 2022. I guess it'll be very interesting to see what it's like in 2026 if we're going to do it on a 4-year run. Just a point.
Do you think recent events will change Twitter?
Well, it could be too. 'Cause
I don't think we have a Twitter presence. We don't have a Twitter presence.
No, but I just
Mr. Musk
asking about the change.
So shy, I mean.
And Councillor Croucher does know about the change.
I do,
I was
yes.
just wondering whether it will have
Perhaps.
much effect.
Oh, I just think it's very interesting that everything is changing so quickly. This will
Would
change.
anybody else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Price.
No, nothing really.
Is anybody against the motion? Carried. Item 13.2, council appoints a councillor to each of the following committees. The first one's the Indigo Environmental Advisory Committee.
Councillor Emerick Tyson.
Yes, I think he has been recommended. Would somebody like to second that? Councillor Shepherd. The Indigo Cultural Heritage Advisory Committee.
I'm wondering whether we need both councillor Goldsworthy and myself are on that, unless there's somebody else who's really keen.
Would anybody else like to go into that committee? If not, the two of you will stay. So it's the one motion moved by councillor Price, seconded by councillor Shepherd. Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Is anybody against the motion? Carried. Item 13.3, I'm not going to read it all. It's a review of the instrument of delegation. I know that one part of that is for the Chief Executive Officer. Another part was for the Environment Protection Act. And the other one was, oh, I just can't see it now. Quite a long recommendation. Would somebody like to move that recommendation? Moved by councillor Horn, seconded by councillor Shepherd. Councillor Horn.
Really, this is just housekeeping. So, yes, I think it's quite straightforward.
Councillor Shepherd.
So there have been some changes in delegations in Cemeteries and the Crematoria Act, Food Act 1984 and the Road Management Act. So we've changed wording in provisions and we've deleted some provisions. So it was last in October 2021. So it's something we update quite regularly to ensure that the right people are in there as delegated to get on with their jobs. So thank you very much, Jolene, for changing this. We love it every time it comes. Oh, and Jane, thank you.
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Is anybody against the motion? Carried. Item 13.4, the recommendation is the council receives the biannual report for the Audit and Risk Committee. Moved by councillor Price, seconded by councillor Croucher. Councillor Price.
So I'm one of two councillors, member of the Audit and Risk Committee, the other being councillor King. This is a requirement of the Act that the committee reports to us. And I think that as you read through it, quite a bit of it's very dry, but it actually has great importance when you understand what it is. And we have had quite a bit of turnover in that committee with independent members getting to the end of their tenure, and we've been quite pleased with the people that have replaced them, and that the robust discussion has continued. Some of the big things that we've done in this period have been the risk policy and the framework, and I really don't think it can be overstated how important that piece of work has been. In the time that I've been on the committee, we've gone through different iterations and then left it alone for a while, and then different iterations again, and they've all had varying levels of maturity, and it was really pleasing to see how well received this was by the committee, and it was very clear. There was an understanding from the independent members and the councillors and the staff of exactly what it needed to be, to the governance staff for that. We've also been looking at our audit program and seeing that, and there's some really important items on that that are coming up. And just to read a piece from the chair's report, it says, we can anticipate that 2022 will be a very busy year for the committee as we work through the significant number of outstanding new challenges that council activity will generate. We can undertake these tasks with some confidence as the committee's work will be well supported by the systematic operations of the risk management framework. Our work practices, general engagement will also benefit enormously from the transition to face-to-face meetings between the committee and other stakeholders. And I suppose I'd just like to say to councillors and to the community, I think we report back regularly on this, but this is a highly effective committee. We're really well represented by our staff. We've got really engaged independent members, and it's very useful to the function of council. So thank you to all their work.
Councillor Croucher.
A most comprehensive report from Councillor Price. What more can I say?
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? I would just like to add that I'm a second member on that committee, and I think our internal auditors, AFS, are doing a very, very thorough job. The reports are really comprehensive. The reports that we've received from the Victorian Auditor General have been really pleasing. I think that Indigo, as far as the audit and risk go, is in a very sound position, and I certainly reiterate the remarks made by Councillor Price. Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Anybody against the motion? Carried. Item 13.5, the recommendation is that council notes the Q3 2021-2022 council plan progress report. Somebody like to move that recommendation? And by Councillor Goldsworthy, seconded by Councillor Shepherd. Councillor Goldsworthy.
There's a matrix that we've received. It's 6 pages long. It details 97 current actions from our council plan. 88% of those are either on track or completed. For those that would like council to stick to rates, roads and rubbish, they need to have a look at this document and see how much is actually done within this organisation on what is a fairly skint budget. So well done to the staff, the CEO, the work that's been done.
Councillor Shepherd.
Thanks, Councillor.
I think these two documents, if the community paid attention to the capital works document and the council action plan, they just about have the business of council under their eyes. So yeah, they're both great documents in terms of informing us what's going on in council. And this really is the community's document, because that council plan, quite a few members of the community had input into it. So hopefully they're keeping an eye on it.
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? No. Is anybody against the motion? Carried. Item 13.6 is for information only regarding contracts awarded under the Chief Executive Officer Delegation for March 2022. Do we have any questions at all? Information only? No. On 13.7, the advisory committee minutes. The recommendation is the council receives the attached unconfirmed advisory committee minutes. 2 notifying recommendations from Indigo. Indigo committee reviewed the terms of reference document and has requested some amendments to the terms and references as detailed in the table below. 3, notes the following recommendations from Indigo Shire Cultural Heritage Advisory Committee. A, the committee recommends to council that funding be allocated for the proposed placemaking and signage policy. B, the committee agrees to provide advice to council on the Golden Horseshoes reenactment and colonial history as provided in the attached letter. 4, notes the following recommendations from the Finance Committee. A, the council accepts the year-to-date February finance report noting the progress against council's Q2 forecast. 5, notes and endorses the officer comments for the recommendation listed below. I think that's talking about the Cultural Heritage Advisory Committee. Councillor Horn.
I'd like to move an amendment to point 5, please, and remove the word endorses. So
That would then read, note the officer comments for the recommendation listed below. We have a seconder, seconded by Councillor Croucher. Is anybody against an amendment? Councillor Goldsworthy. And then Councillor Shepherd. Councillor Goldsworthy.
Well, you know, get the mover to
Yeah.
speak
Do we have
first.
to vote?
Moving an amendment of just.
There's no motion on the table. So that is the motion.
We have to vote.
That's
You just read out the recommendation. That's the first.
Yeah.
Yours is the motion.
Well, it's, yes, we just wanted to reflect the fact that we're, there's another process involved in that step, and we just want to comment on the recommendations as listed below without endorsing.
Councillor Croucher.
Oh, I just noticed in the recommendation, it's noting right throughout 2, 3 and 4 is all noting, but I don't know where we've got the word endorses as well. So I don't think it's necessary to go there. Just noting the officer's comments for the recommendations listed below.
Somebody like to speak against the amendment? Councillor Goldsworthy.
It's the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Against the motion.
Yes. So the original recommendation included the words endorse, and for that reason, I believe it should remain in there, because what we are endorsing is the officer comments, not the recommendations from the committee. And the officer comments are that it, on the particular one in relation to allocation of funding for interpretive signage, the officer comment was basically that it go through the usual budget process. I see no issue with the officer comment. We should be putting this through the usual budget process. It's a determination of the council at some stage in the future that they do not allocate the funding, then that is entirely appropriate. So that's why it should remain there. And so that's why I'm speaking against this motion, only because I would propose that if this motion is defeated, we actually revisit the recommendation and include the entire sentence from point 5.
Just a question. So you want council to note and endorse as the officer comments for the recommendations as listed below. And one of the recommendations listed below is that the committee recommends to council that the funding be allocated to the proposed placemaking and signage policy. How much is that?
What it says, reading verbatim from the officer comment, this expenditure recommendation is noted and endorsed for consideration through the usual budget process. Discussion with Capital Works team clarifies that the low end quote is 40 to 50K will be sufficient. So it's not saying that they're recommending that that money be spent. They're just saying it should go through for consideration through the usual budget process. So we're not saying we're going to spend that money. What we're saying is put it through the budget. And if it's recommended by council at a later stage not to endorse it, and so be it.
So that all of the other points talks about notes, but the last one talks about endorsement. But okay, Councillor Shepherd.
We normally endorse the officer comments, like every time we do this, we endorse the officer comments when we have advisory committee minutes that we endorse. So, so that's one aspect of it, but also I'm also agreeing with councillor Goldsworthy is that if we leave that out, we're not endorsing the comments by the officer, which is we're going to put it to through the normal budgetary cycle to see whether and test it there where everything else is tested that people put forward for a budget request. And if you read the minutes, this is an expert committee that we have, and they've given us quite very good advice on the fact that they feel that we need something that's more consistent across the whole Shire around cultural heritage signage, and that we need to look into it. So if we're going to take their advice, then we should endorse the officer comment where it's going to go to budget to have a look at it.
I've probably missed this, but who's the officer?
It's Cameron Orty. Oh, you mean the officer, the budget officer?
No, the one with
Cameron Orty is the officer for that particular committee.
Cameron Orty.
Yep.
All right, would anybody else like to speak to this motion?
Does it-
Motion? Councillor Price.
I have absolutely no problem with endorsing the officer comments. I think that we do that each month. I see no difference. I also really want to encourage that when we have advisory committees in place, that we ask for skills-based membership, and we get really clear, strong advice from these committees when they make recommendations to us. They know that there would be a process. They don't assume that they've just passed that on their own merit in a Cultural Heritage Advisory Committee meeting. So I think the process is really clear. They should make really strong, clear recommendations to us. Then it's up to the officer to take that through the budget process, and that's where we would have some discussion about that. At the moment, I feel like we're just receiving that, and I would encourage them to continue to make those that strong advice, basically, because that's what we ask them to do. I also wanted to make comment about the Access Committee minutes. If I vote against this motion, it will be only because I'm hoping that there's a second motion that includes the word endorse. If that doesn't happen, I just wanted to note that the Access Committee has a program going called Good Access, Good Business. And one of our most recent visits has been to Bilsons, who have welcomed this program with open arms. And it's really to be commended because they really have got every avenue covered, and they welcome all of our feedback. And it's a real credit to them that they do that. Some people see providing access as just something that they can't manage in this time with every other pressure on hospitality. So that they've accepted every piece of feedback that we have, and they're a really great example of Access Good Business, the program that we run through the Access Committee.
Councillor Hall, would you like to sum up your motion?
I think the difficulty is that the word endorses seems to predict an acceptance of it. I think that's the issue for me.
Can we clarify if that's the case? If we endorse this, does it make a budget allocation of between 40 and 100?
Spoken.
Can I ask that question?
Well, we're at the summing up stage, so,
Are you allowed to ask questions at the summing up stage?
well, I don't know whether the summing up was even finished and you've interrupted with.
Okay, I'll wait till the end.
No, that was pretty much all I had to say.
So questions after the summing up.
Questions can be asked at any time at the discussion.
So by endorsing the officer's comments, CEO, by endorsing the officer's comments, does this make a budget allocation of between $40,000 and $150,000?
No, it does not.
I've got other questions as well. To the CEO, there's other officer comments relating to other items on there. So Indigo, and then there's two other recommendations. If this motion is carried as it stands, will those officer comments be endorsed as well, or not endorsed?
Well, technically, they're just noted. We're not giving any weight. We're not giving the weight of council. So some of them are a bit procedural, so it wouldn't matter. I'm presuming then that with regards to cultural heritage, that we don't put that item through the budget process. That's not been.
So with the Indigo officer comment, where it says the proposed changes to item 7 will be considered as part of the future review. It serves as a reference. Would that occur or not?
I'm not aware of that future review, but if there is such a future review, then I'd assume there'd still be an opportunity to make changes to that future review. So it seems that one seems more procedural and administrative, and that would probably still go ahead regardless.
And then the one below that says the proposed changes to item 17 are supported and will be implemented upon resolution of council. If we don't endorse it, there's no such resolution.
So I'm not familiar, just don't know what item 17 is. Probably not support them. But I'm not aware, just looking on the run, I'm not sure what that item is saying without taking that on notice, I guess. Does anyone else knows the answer to that question just offhand?
Well, it appears to be the committee membership, and so it's looking to add the business development officer or any other such council officer as agreed to by the committee and or relevant director. So if this is not endorsed, then I go that can't occur.
I can't see those comments in the motion.
Yeah, because
The
your
motion's there.
Yeah,
We're not talking about notice in support.
yeah. So item 5 is that notes and endorses the officer comments for recommendation. It's not just talking about one officer comment. It's talking about the officer comments. Those items are listed there.
I tend to agree with the assertion that those changes then wouldn't be supported.
So I think it's not too late to forecast that if this motion is defeated, I will move a motion as it is written and present it to us initially.
All right, well, you've summed up councillor Horn, so I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? Against? On the casting vote, on my casting vote, I can't change it. All those in favour for the minutes? Councillor Horn, Councillor Croucher, Councillor Gaffney. Against is Councillor Price, Shepherd and Goldsworthy. And on the
Tie, a cast. If you have a tie vote, you have a casting vote.
casting vote is for the motion. Item 13.8, recommendation is the council accepts the attached informal minutes of council records. Somebody like to move that recommendation? Excuse me, do you mind not speaking while I'm calling for the motion, Councillor Shepherd? Councillor Croucher, do I have a seconder? Councillor Price? Councillor Croucher?
No, I don't need to say anything. Well, they're just meeting.
Councillor Price?
No.
Does anyone else want to speak to the motion? Is everybody against the motion? Carried.
Now step in here.
Yes.
In relation to the notice of motion of 14.1, I'd like to move that we defer item 14.1 notice of motion till the May meeting.
Somebody like seconded by Councillor Horn. There can be no conversation about that, correct, CEO? So we'll now put the motion. And the motion is that
We defer item 14.1 notice of motion till the May meeting,
which is the 17th of May.
10th of May.
So no one can speak against that motion. Nobody can speak for it. All those in favour of the motion? Against? So all those for, Councillor Croucher, raise your hand. Councillor Horn, Councillor Gaffney. All those against, Councillor Goldsworthy, Shepherd and Price. Casting vote of the mayor. Motion is passed. Item 15. The mayor's diary. If there's any questions? On 16.1 for information is the decisions register. Do we have any general business? Councillor Horn?
Beg pardon, sorry, I was writing. In general business, yes, I would like to ask a question about Regional Roads Victoria to Director Ian and others. To come back to us. Do we have any further meetings planned with them?
No, look, at this stage we don't. So they briefed council, I can't remember the date, but a few weeks back. We are working with them with a view to bringing a recommendation to council, but at this stage I don't have a further update for you.
Very much. Thank you.
Councillor Croucher?
No, I've got no general business.
Councillor Price? Councillor Shepherd? Councillor Goldsworthy?
I'd just like to acknowledge that Leah Mitchell, who's a local Beechworth resident, has started an online petition in relation to the Buckland Gap Road between the Buckland Gap and the Great Alpine Road. She's looking to get the work done on the shoulders. It's a Regional Roads Victoria Road, and whilst it's not in our shire, a lot of our residents use that road. We also have tourists that make their way between Beechworth and Bright. It is a potential problem in relation to collisions, and I just think that there might be a role for us to advocate to Regional Roads Victoria. So either have it included in our advocacy plan, or maybe start at a local level with the Regional Roads Director and see what can be done.
You've got that, CEO?
Yep.
The only general business that I'd like to say is that I have been invited to raise the rainbow flag in the Hobbit Day on the 17th of May. Do we have a time for that? The time we'll put onto the council website, and all members of the community are welcome to attend that flag raising event, and of the rainbow flag, and I'm certainly looking forward to it. There's no other general business. I'll now close the meeting. Thank you.